Hi there, welcome back. Today we're going to look at a basic way for setting up for glacier travel. The way I'm demonstrating today is best for 3 or 4 people on a rope, so it doesn't work well for 2 people on a rope. There's other systems for that. You can take a look at our premium videos if you'd like to see how to set up for glacier travel with 2 people. This system is also ideally set up for systems where you're not doing pitches of steep climbing, so you don't have to climb up and over a really steep bergstrand that has some ice climbing on it. There's not pitches of rock, there's not complex lowers or anything like that, which means that I'm not going to have to change the length of my rope while doing glacier travel. It can stay essentially the same for most of the time I'm in that terrain. Okay, so the first thing that I've done is I've stacked my rope, which means starting with one end, making a pile until I get to the other end. So one end is on the bottom, the other end of it is at the top. And now I'm going to measure things off. Now there's a lot of different ways you can measure the rope off. Today I'm working with a 40-meter single rated rope. A lot of times when I'm doing glacier travel, I'll work with a 40-meter half rope, about an 8mm rope. This one is a 9mm rope, and it's dry treated. Either works fine. This particular rope at 9mm single rated will also work if I did need to do pitches of 5th class climbing or some technical ice climbing, but either is fine for glacier travel. I'm starting with the end on the top, and I'm going to make a figure 8 on a bite. Now this particular system that I'm showing works really well if you are a guide or the leader of a trip, or you're in a recreational party where you're really the only one who knows crevasse rescue systems well. If there are more than one person on your rope team that knows crevasse rescue systems well, then instead of putting someone on the end of the rope like this, you may want to put them a little further down and have them carry coils that they can use for crevasse rescue. But in this case, we're going to assume there's only one person on the rope team that knows crevasse rescue systems well enough to enact a rescue. Okay, so I put in a figure 8 on a bite at the very end, and then I'm going to measure off from this. So I'm going to do for a team of 3. For a team of 3, on the glaciers that we have here in the Pacific Northwest, the crevasses are moderate in size when compared to all glacial environments. Like larger crevasses exist in, say, New Zealand and polar regions like Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, places like that. I'm going to measure off 6 arm lengths between, and my arm lengths are just under 6 feet, so it ends up being just about 10 meters, right around 33 to 34 feet between climbers if I measure 6 of my arm lengths off. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now you can choose your form of bite knot you'd like to clip people into. You can use an overhand in a bite. You can use the artillery hitch, which is more commonly known as the butterfly knot, or you can use a figure 8 on a bite. It doesn't matter. All of those knots are plenty strong for the forces involved in these systems, okay? So I'm just going to use an overhand on a bite. It's quite simple to tie and untie, okay? And I want to keep that bite knot relatively small, okay? The reason I keep it small is in the event that someone does need to do some rescue, their friction hitch on this rope, should they be using a system that involves friction hitches, is not going to jam up against this knot if this is clipped into a master point. If this knot were further down the rope, I'd need a much longer friction hitch to reach past this bulky part of the knot and get it to engage. So I'm going to keep that bite knot quite small for the clip-in point. Okay, so I have one climber clipped in at the end, one climber clipped in the middle, so I have one more climber left, which will be the person who's leading this rope team, whether they're a guide or just an advanced recreational party member. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm also going to just do an overhand on a bite for that lead party member. Okay? Now that leaves me with a fair amount left over. Now, for me, this will leave me about almost half of my 40-meter rope left over, which, especially if there's 3 people on the rope, is more than enough rope left over to enact a rescue. And here you can see, actually, is my middle mark, just past where I put in that knot. Okay, so This particular system, I'm not measuring the rope off. I just know that this 40-meter rope is about 23 of my arm lengths. When I put 3 people on, I'm using just barely more than half the rope. Essentially, anytime you're setting up a rope system, you want to have about a third left over in order to enact a rescue minimum. Okay, or when you get down to single people enacting the system, you need 2/3 left over. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate what to do with the remainder of this rope. So I'm going to take this knot and I'm going to put it right down at my knee level. And that's going to allow me to have enough slack so that this next coil that I make can go inside my backpack. If I was going to have to climb pitches of 5th class climbing, some ice climbing, some steeper sections, then I might want to take kiwi coils on. But if I don't have to take kiwi coils on because I'm not going to need to change the length of my rope, I don't like to, because kiwi coils can be hot. You know, it's like adding an extra layer. And they can also be fat and cumbersome, and they make it difficult to take your pack on and off. So I try to avoid using kiwi coils whenever they're not really necessary. Okay, so here I'm going to do a little T-Rex coil. So starting with these short bent arms, I'm just going to go back and forth over the back of my neck with these butterfly flakes here. Okay. Flaking the rope simply means to organize the rope in a fashion that it can easily pay out from one end to the next. So butterfly is simply referring to the way this wings out. And now I'm going to finish with the alpine coil finish. Okay, so for a more detailed version of the alpine coil, you can take a look at my other videos. But essentially I left a little bit of tail left over. You want at least 2 feet of tail, so I've got 3 feet here. And I'm going to make a little bend of the rope, and then a second little bend of the rope, and then I'm simply going to wrap. And each time I wrap, I cinch that up really nice and tight. Okay? And then when I get to the very end, I tuck it through in a loops, pull the other side, and it cinches that in quite nicely. Okay? So this is going to go inside my backpack. Open that pack up. Generally, Summit packs are not fully stuffed. There's usually room in there for a little bit of rope. So inside the backpack is a great choice, keeps things more organized. It's right at the top of my pack, so in the event there is a rescue scenario, I can easily open my pack and pop out these rescue coils. And now I'm going to take that bite knot and I'm going to jam it right up to the top of the pack. Okay? So it's just sticking out the top, and I'm going to stick it over my right shoulder because I'm right-handed, so it's easy for me to remember where that rope is coming out. Cinch everything down. Okay, I'll put this backpack on. And I'll pull on that little strand until I get this bite knot exactly where I want it, okay, which is going to be just above this belay loop. And I'm going to attach into that bite knot. So I like to use one of 2 types of locking carabiner. So this is a triple action locking carabiner from Petzl, okay? And then this is a magnetron locking carabiner. I find that magnetron works really well in cold environments, but if it's a little bit moist and you get a little dampness inside, then sometimes it can freeze up and lock up and be difficult to undo. You just have to warm it up in your hand in order to open it up. The tri-action lockers, they can get a little bit of snow inside the barrel of the locking mechanism, and they can also result in freezing up, and same kind of thing, you need to warm them up and move them back and forth to open them up. You can also use 2 locking screw gate carabiners, or even a locker and a non-locking carabiner, but some system to get yourself into the rope that's sure not to come undone in case you take a steep fall into a crevasse. Okay, so that's nice. It had a little bit of tension because I just pulled it down from my pack, and then I'm going to buckle this underneath my pack strap. Okay, now in the event that I fall in a crevasse, this could pull right there. Okay, and it'll weight the rope. That's really important, that you're going to take the load onto your harness on the rope. Okay, and then I'll buckle this up. And then the great thing about this is I don't need to take any kiwi coils on. I'm pretty much good to go. So another thing to address is you'll see a lot of systems for attaching to the rope will involve putting a friction hitch, or sometimes even a progress capture device on the rope that's going to the other climbers. So I think that's a really good thing to consider when you're looking at the probability of a crevasse fall. So in polar regions like Alaska, or if you happen to be in Antarctica, you've got continental snowpack that's really loose and unconsolidated. Then crevasses tend to be quite large. The risk of a crevasse fall is pretty high. And that's from a, what we say, like a collapse, where you might be walking across the bridge and you just fall through. Okay, here in the Northwest, in the standard season that people tend to be climbing, which is generally mid-June through early September, the risk of punch through or crevasse collapse is much, much smaller than in those regions. And a lot of our crevasse falls are actually from trip, slip, and fall accidents. And so attaching a friction hitch here, especially if you use a system that has, stirrups for your legs and things like that, can become tripping hazards. So we're taking a look at the type of hazard, trying to figure out the system we need to use to reduce the likelihood of a crevasse fall. And here in the Northwest, I typically don't add a friction hitch unless I'm climbing an early season, where the probability of a pop through crevasse fall is much, much higher than in later season, where it's a slip, trip, and fall hazard. Okay, so I'm not going to attach a friction hitch here. And at this point, we're all set up for glacier travel, and I would leave from my safety zone here, usually up on a moraine or out of a camp. And then once we hit the glacier, we're good to go.